Hmm? Ah!
This was a point when I finished residency a couple of years later. I was doing well, and I asked myself the question, why do I exist? It all started there. That's where this is now that question. It started from that question. Why am I here? Because I was getting in this mode in life where you get up, go to work, you come home, you eat dinner, and you start the thing right over. And it started getting very monotonous. And I was like, this cannot be it, right? This can't be what life is about, where you just wake up, work, and then die, and then that's the end of it. I mean, then what, right? So I started that question. So that's actually how my journey started.
Welcome to a Face Project podcast. Face Project podcast.
It's just pure life. It's pure
and my
innocence.
mom
it's
is
pure
brighter.
gratitude.
So I ended up in America.
I am an adopted Korean and have been all my life.
It's a perfect blend of science and creativity.
I was screaming, I will live over here till I die.
Thank you so much for listening. You're tuned into a Face Project podcast where we feature stories told by people from around the world in order to broaden our understanding of the human experience. My name is Natalie Jennings. I am your host, and this is episode number 27. Hey all, before we dive into this episode, I just wanted to thank all of you who have signed up to our newsletter and subscribed to the podcast or the magazine. If you're not really sure what the magazine is all about, we do a quarterly print and web magazine. People that see the magazine say it's more like a coffee table book rather than a magazine, but it is a quarterly, and it features transcriptions of all of our stories from that quarter, including photographs of each of the storytellers. So if you're one of those folks that likes something tactile or would like to have a collection of stories to put on your bookshelf or on your coffee table, or just check out on your tablet or phone, you can head over to afaceproject.com and under the store menu find both the web and print version of our magazines. We are offering, as sort of a thank you to all of you for a very successful first year, we are offering a free copy of one of the back issues of our digital magazine if you just sign up to our newsletter. So head over to afaceproject.com and there's a big green bar at the top of the page where you can sign up and check out our magazine and become more involved in our community. One other way to be involved and check out things that are going on with the Face Project, we have started recently to do a new thing on Facebook called Ask the Storyteller. If you're part of our Facebook group, which is called A Face Project Community, then you may have seen the last couple of episodes. This Sunday, May 7th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, we will be hearing from Julia. Julia, if you're a regular listener to the podcast, was way back in episode number 2. You can find her episode on iTunes or SoundCloud or our website under the Stories menu. She will be doing a live Q&A with all of you. So if you found her story interesting and would like to tune in and see what she has to say and ask her questions about her story, which was meeting her parents, her biological parents in Korea after being adopted and growing up here in Minnesota, you can tune into that again on Sunday, May 7th. This is 2017. Just to acknowledge that this might be the future that you're listening to this, and this event will not be happening if it is not 2017. Sunday, May 7th, 2017 at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, Facebook Live in our group. To find our group, just hop on Facebook and search A Face Project Community and ask to join. One more note about community. Our question this week, as you know, we sometimes ask questions of the public and get random answers. In this episode, we decided to ask people how they are helping out in their community. And I thought it was really interesting. One of the folks that I asked turned the question right around on me, and I found it to be a really humbling question to be faced with, only because I think somewhere in our minds we might think we're doing more than we are. Perhaps some of us are doing way more than we say we're doing, but I think the reverse might be true more often. I myself realize that. I know I volunteer and give money, and I feel like the work I do with Face Project and other projects I have is good work and contributes positively, but really when I thought about it, I felt like I could be doing more. So I thought this was an interesting question, and here's what people had to say.
What is one way that you contribute positively to your community?
I am a librarian, and just by the virtue of being a librarian, I contribute to my community because the library itself creates community. We bring people together from all different sides of town, and we try to foster a love of learning and a love of reading and a love of finding out what's new in the world. So that all brings new communities together all the time, every day.
This is a hard question because I think at one point I was going out of my way to do that and volunteering at food shelves, and then you get busier and you have student debt and you have bills, and then you try to do things like that and you maybe volunteer and somebody asks you, but I mean, I can say a lot of things that maybe kind of contribute positively, but to be honest, besides just giving some money away, maybe not a lot. I don't know. It's tough.
These kinds of activities with interfaith dialogue, I think it's really important for people to hear one another's stories, because when we hear each other's stories, then we stop becoming the other. So that's one way that I get involved in my community as both a volunteer, and I also do it for paid reasons, but as a volunteer often.
Today's story is told by Eugene. I met Eugene through a very good friend of mine and traveled with him and his group to Guatemala in December. Eugene's story is one of journey and personal discovery and community and helping others. He is a really, really inspiring person, and I hope you'll find it to be inspiring as well. So without further ado, here is Eugene.
I'm Eugene Gicheru, originally from Kenya, although we grew up in the city, so a lot of people ask all these weird questions about wildlife and all that, but we grew up in the city, but grew up most of my life in Dallas, Texas. So I was, for the most part, actually for 12 or 13 of those years, I was the youngest in our family, until Julie rolled around. So I was spoiled. It was four of us. So my older brother, he's 4 years older than I am. My older sister is 3 years older than I am. And then me, and then Julie came 12 years later. So it was interesting. So I was the young one growing up, so I had the benefit of learning from people's mistakes, my siblings' mistakes. And so my brother finished, he was the very motivated one in my family. He did really well in high school, got a scholarship to SMU, and that's actually how we all started moving towards the U.S. 87, my mom and my two sisters moved. They all moved to Dallas because he was here, my brother was there. And then I came in 1988. Culture shock was in high school because I went to high school in the U.S. and that was completely different. Ooh, that was rough. The first year was very rough, but I tend to adapt very quickly. Kind of the teaching style's different, right? Teaching style's different. interactions with your teachers are different. It's more authoritative in Kenya. It's more the British style of teaching. So that was a big shock. And then there was the whole, when I first came in, the accent issue created a lot of problems. So it took about 9 months, and then I was good to go at that point. So this is just part of, Guatemala is a part of a journey. I think, and my journey started maybe 10 years ago. And for me, it was more of a spiritual journey, right? And ever since then, the dots have just connected. Let me take you back. So I came in 88, graduated high school in 1990. I had a big 5 years of doing nothing. People ask me, what did I do for 5 years? The running joke is I walked the earth, like Kung Fu, the guy, David Carradine. Because I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? I had so many odd jobs. I can tell you, probably had 20 of them. I mean, I managed a Chick-fil-A for a while. I did some housekeeping stuff. I was an insurance agent, actually a licensed insurance agent. I could tell you car insurance. So I've done a lot of stuff, but in 1994, and I would go in and out of community college because I really wasn't serious and I didn't have any direction at the time. My brother would keep telling me, hey, you really need to get together. And I was like, let me live my life, right? And so in 94-ish, it just, I don't know what happened that year. It just struck me like, what are you really doing? So 94, I started getting serious. 95, it really clicked. So I went to the University of Texas at Arlington for a year, and I just poured my heart and soul into the whole thing, and ended up doing really well. Then I transferred to University of Texas at Austin. My wife still lived in Dallas, so I'd commute every weekend. I'd just drive back and forth. It was pretty simple. I watch people. I'm a people watcher, and I love, and not in the vain kind of sense, not to see what they were. I love trying to understand human behavior. It's the most fascinating thing for me. So I watch people, and so I used to watch my brother, and I was like, and he's very successful, right? I'd watch him, and I'm like, so what does he have that I don't have? And I couldn't find anything. He was just motivated. That's really all he had. It was just motivation, the will to do something. So I'd watch him, and he'd keep bothering me about it. I need to do something in my life. And in 1995, I looked at it, and I was like, there's nothing he's doing that I can't do. And it was just a day that I just thought that, and I said, it's time to do it. I asked him, what do I need to do? He said, you just have to pour your heart and soul into this whole thing. So I just did that, and I did really well in Arlington. Then I transferred to UT Austin. So my goal, from 95 onwards, my goal was to do medicine. I applied to 20 schools, but it was premature. It was very early. And I got one interview, and I got into that school. So residency. Emergency medicine is probably one of the most difficult residencies to get into. So I applied to 30 places. My wife and I spent 2 months driving across the U.S. I went from Saginaw, Michigan to Arkansas to Pennsylvania, just doing interviews. And I really wanted to go back to Dallas, and I ranked it my first, and I got in. So I did my residency from 2002 to 2005. The friends that I have are lifetime friends. You'll notice even when I interact with people, if I don't feel like we have a really deep, I have trouble with superficial conversation. I just have trouble with that. So as this is happening in 2004, Javier, who you met, he comes in because he wanted to do a fellowship in toxicology. The minute I met him, I just knew there was something there. So we became really good friends. So meet him in 2004. Larry, he was a year behind me. We had a very similar personality. So we decided we should start a business together. 2007, him, me, and Javier, outside of what we were doing, opened an urgent care in Forney, Texas. So we did that for a year. It did really, really well. So there's another guy that was in my residency. His name was Dan, and he was in my class. So we asked him to join us. So it was me, him, Larry, and Javier. I was in touch with him every so often. And then 2008, I called him up. He just called me. We were talking. I said, hey, you want to join us and do some urgent cares? So he joined us for Forney Rockwall. In 2010, he calls me and says, hey, I grew up in Laramie. It's an up-and-coming place. I'm like, I don't know about up-and-coming. Why don't we open urgent care here? So I said, okay. So I had 3 urgent cares. So I would fly weekly to Laramie, Wyoming. We did that for 4 years. And we still had full-time jobs. Everything's going really well. Larry gets a call from a friend of a friend who was who was a retired physician and then now he does mission trips. So he said, "Hey, I'm going on a mission trip to Armenia. Would you guys be interested? He asked Larry, would you be interested in going?" And Larry said, "Well, let me ask my friend." So he asked me, I'm like, "Well, sure." So we went. That's on my first trip, 2011. We went to Armenia. Very interesting place. It's right next to Iran. Yeah, and very interesting. So we did that for a week. Loved it, and that's when I started doing mission trips. So we would go into old school buildings, and they go out ahead of us and tell people we're providing free care, and then you just have lines and lines. I think at that time we saw about 600 people in about 4 days. Yeah, so that was when it all started. In 2012, Larry's friend that he had known told us about an organization. It's a group of Messianic Jews that they do mission trips to, and their goal is to treat the lost tribes of Israel, the lost Jews. So there's Jews in Africa, right? In Ethiopia, in Zimbabwe, they just kind of dispersed. And there's some in India and some in China. So we started doing trips with them to Ethiopia, done like 3 of those. And they have a very well organized, we saw 10,000 in 5 days. But it's from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's just nonstop. And they have the process really well done. So myself, Larry, Javier, have been doing these trips for 5 years maybe. So now what ends up happening, so now we all work at the same hospital. We have these urgent cares. When people see us, when they watch and we come back from these trips, a lot of people ask, we really want to do these trips with you. Why are you doing them? We say, oh, this is what we're called to do. We just really enjoy them. But then we started getting criticism, which is the most interesting part. So you can take criticism one of 2 ways. You can either let it bother you or just at least have some introspection and say, is it real or not? First one was, hey, especially it came from nurses. We can't afford to go. We can't go. I wish you guys could find some way to get scholarships. So we said, well, let's start sponsoring people. So we started sponsoring people. And then we said, well, let's formalize this sponsorship so it can be tax deductible. Basically, if a nurse wanted, or not, and I keep saying nurse, it's nurse, tech, clerical staff. If they want to go, they just let us know that they're interested in going, and they just tell us their reason for going, right? And their reason is self-development, self-fulfillment, spiritual. So we started doing that, and then we said, well, let's formalize this, and we started a nonprofit. We called it Great Commission Outreach. Then the next criticism would get, well, why don't you do anything local? So last year we opened a free clinic. It's open every Tuesday, 2 hours, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And we don't ask for anything. Whether you have insurance or not doesn't really matter to us, right? Because the minute you start trying to split hairs like that, then you say, well, how much do you make? And we really did not want to get into that debate. We funded ourselves, me, Larry, Javier, we just funded ourselves. It started with us seeing 2 patients here a week, 3, 4, 8. 2 weeks ago, so 23 in 2 hours. And that's a lot. So that was an answer to a criticism. So now the final piece came with a criticism about, well, you go into these places, even if you go abroad, what are you doing? You treat them for a week, they have diabetes, what are you really doing, right? So that's the other, and so that's a fair question. So we went back to the drawing board and thinking, so what do we do? So who's taking care of them after that? At some point, we need to figure out how to do a long-term project. The hospital that I work for, and Larry and Javier work for, Deborah has been the recruiter for physicians into that hospital. Apparently earlier this year, Nathan calls Deborah and says, hey, do you have any doctors that could go to Guatemala with us? Yeah, so it's me, my wife came, Deborah, Daryl, and there was 3 other people that we knew. So we came in July. So the plan was just to help them, right? So we are currently in Antigua, Guatemala. Further out into the mountains is where all the Mayan people live. The first city that we stopped at is Chuluc. Another 45 minutes up the mountain is Pila. So we came in, did the clinic in both cities, and when we were there, the director of the school was almost in tears because she knew that they sponsored Chuluc. And so she asked me and Betsy Dawson if we would be willing to do that too. She just wanted basic things. She just wanted basic nutrition for her kids. She said because they're all off the growth charts, malnourished, they don't concentrate in school. Chuluc has 50 or 60 kids. Pila has 174. So when we were there that day and she asked, could we sponsor her? I'm like, I don't know, we're going to get 175 kids sponsored. And you do the math, 175 times 35 is $6,000 a month. And if you commit to per month, it's every month. You can't rain or shine. I kind of just prayed about it. I was like, I've come to the point in my life where if you ask and I'm able to do it, if I'm able to do it, I do it. There's no point of, I used to debate things and try to rationalize things. But now if I'm able to, if you ask and I'm able to, I'll do it. Every morning, starting the end of January is when the school starts. Every morning, we've gotten a commitment from the mothers of the village. They're going to come in every day, Monday through Friday, and they're going to cook for their kids, for the school. And that's going to include a full nutritious breakfast. They've told us that these kids don't eat at home. Just not because they're not wanting to eat, they don't have anything to eat. So every 2 weeks, we've come up with a basket that's going to be provided to the whole family. It's going to feed 6 to 8 people. It's going to have 5 pounds of rice, 5 pounds of beans, 5 pounds of sugar, 5 pounds of pasta, 5 pounds of flour, some butter, cooking oil, and coffee. It's to encourage the kids to go to school and to encourage the families to send their kids to school. Our organization, which is Great Commission Outreach, which is not attached to any church, it's just a group of Christian folks who believe that our duty is not to judge others, but to act, which is to help those in need unconditionally, love those in need unconditionally. You start looking at civilizations, not just us, and other civilizations, and you start looking at different periods in time, right? And you start thinking, yes, I'm a unique individual, but there's been billions of people who've lived before me. And I'm pretty sure I'm not reinventing the wheel here. And I'm pretty sure that this question, why do I exist, is not unique to me. I'm not some genius that's decided I'm going to think, why do I exist? That question has been asked from the beginning of time, right? Humans have struggled with that because purpose, right? You struggle with purpose. What the big religions do, I think religion tries to give people purpose. But I think what's happened over the years, it's gotten distorted, right? And if you look at, to me, what's fascinating is Christianity is the most fascinating thing for me, because if you look at the initial and original intent of Christianity and what the early church looked like, it does not look like what it looks like today. Absolutely does not. My big thing is community. This is what it's supposed to be about. This is what Jesus Christ taught. Living in community, holding each other accountable, being a part of raising the community up, right? And being involved in other people's lives and loving other people unconditionally and not getting involved in what you're not doing, but more involved in what you should be doing, right? And so that's been my journey. That's what has now motivated me to, if I cross paths with you, there's a reason. And it's not for me to understand why, it's for me to just to act. So if you look at why I'm here, it's because I just said, I was asked, and here I am. And from there, if you look at the connections that happen, you meet the director, who then asks us to sponsor. She asked a question. Again, it was the same question. Can we afford it? If no one were to sponsor those kids, could I raise, just with enough friends that I have, could we support that community? The answer was yes. Could we commit to time? The answer was yes. Does it interfere with anything that interferes with my core values, which is faith, family, friends, and fellow man, right? I have the 4 Fs. These are my core values, the 4 Fs, right? And it was no. So we said, okay, let's do it. And it's just interesting. It's a dangerous way to live, though, when you get asked, because people will ask you to do some things. Like I was asked to go to Pakistan in March. And I don't have an excuse not to go. I can afford it. I have the time. It doesn't interfere with anything. But it's you get pushed into these things. But I just feel that if I'm asked, there's a reason I'm being asked. I'm a very flawed individual. I mean, all humans are flawed. Not me just particular, but all humans are flawed. And I struggle with when people put people up on pedestals too much, because that person on the pedestal is bound to fail or have a flaw. and it disappoints people. So I'm very nervous about that, right? Because I struggle with that, because I know that I'm just like any other human that can fail, right? I don't want to be called a leader. Just walk. We just walk together. What I do is I go through life. This is what my core values, and I know the direction I'm going. I know I'm very clear, and I'll bump into people along the way, and people say, "Hey, I want to come do what you're doing." Sure, join me. I'm not leading you. I know what leads me, but you can join us. And at some point, if you're not comfortable with the journey, it's fine. We'll still be friends. But my greatest joy, and I think when I look back and everybody asks me, what does a life well lived look like? It's not even a destination. It's what I picture 50 years from now. Myself, my wife, my kids, my grandkids, my friends, my immediate family, extended family, friends that I've known for 50 years, and we've done life together, right? And just looked at the things we've done, and that'll be fun. It's what I look forward to. It's a journey, it's not a destination. Ask yourself, why do you exist? What's your purpose? And you have to be very, very willing to have an honest conversation with yourself and go into some very dark places and go into some very scary places, right? Because you'll go into these places that you'll ask yourself, does God really exist? You have to have that debate with yourself, and you have to understand it. Without that discussion and understanding and reading and looking at past civilizations and looking at past human behavior and looking at religions just in general, looking at spirituality in general, you have to ask yourself that and have to be willing to go into some very scary places with yourself and honest discussions with yourself. That's where it starts. My gift is seeing the gift in others and drawing it out. It's very odd. That's what it is. That is what I do well. I'm able to pull gifts out of people, put them together, and deploy it. And it's taken me a while to figure it out. Not being good enough and not really understanding that it is your gift that's unique to you. I think a lot of people underestimate that. And it's not good enough. And then you start making excuses. I don't have time, right? What if this happens? You start worrying about, you start having this discussion with yourself and start doubting yourself. No, I think once you find your purpose, discover your gift, you just have to deploy it. And your gift could be anything, right? And just being able to understand your gift and being able to deploy it for the benefit of others, right?
Thank you again for tuning in, everyone. Once again, if you would like to explore photographs from the Guatemala trip and see portraits of Eugene, head to afaceproject.com. At the top, you'll see a stories menu. Click on podcasts and find episode number 27, Eugene. If you are interested in supporting his group of people, helping all around the world, Great Commission outreach, head to the website as well. And on his story page, you'll find all of the links that you're looking for to support the cause. This episode was recorded and produced by me, web layout and design by Aaron Woods, photography by Natalie Jennings. We will be back in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening.
And you're part of this, again, and I'm going to put this on record. You coming here now is not by chance, I promise you. You were meant to be here.